There's a new Titan in the NFL. And I'm back in the director's chair for another blockbuster. George, man, he's probably the most freakishly talented receiver I've ever shared a field with. But just a few years back, the league slapped a label on him, public enemy number one. He was caught jawing with the fans. So what's the real story? Was he actually the bad guy, or was everyone just reading him wrong? To get to the truth, we have to rewind to Hoover, Alabama, back when George Pickens was an absolute force of nature. And it's a touchdown, Pickens! Every college in the country was knocking on his door. And I mean everybody. We're talking Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Florida, Florida State, Alabama, Tennessee, and LSU, the biggest names in the game, were all trying to get a piece. So I'm committed to Auburn. And it looked like a dream team. Auburn had also locked down 5-star quarterback Bo Nix, and the two of them clicked instantly. But then came signing day, and George Pickens sent a shockwave through the entire world of college football. Wait, George Pickens did what? No, this is confirmed. It's real. George Pickens has flipped his commitment to Georgia. It was probably one of the toughest choices I've ever had to make in my entire life. It was brutal, you know? This entire football journey, my whole senior year, I'd been building that connection with Nix the whole time. In the end, it came down to the coaches. I knew that with Kirby Smart, we were always going to be in the hunt for a national championship. To say Auburn felt betrayed is an understatement. The hate came pouring in, and it was deafening. But Pickens tuned it all out. He had one mission: go ball out at Georgia. And it didn't take him long to make his mark. George Pickens. Man, this kid is different. He might not be in college for long. He came out of the gate absolutely scorching against Missouri. He finished the game with 2 mind-bending touchdowns. He goes deep for Pickens. Did he really just pull that in? He did. Touchdown, Georgia. But then came the game against Auburn, the team he spurned. He was held to a single catch for just 11 yards. And just 2 weeks after that, Pickens found himself in hot water. It was rivalry week. Georgia versus Georgia Tech. The tension in those games is always through the roof. And this time, GP let it get the best of him. And this is where it crosses the line into selfish. Okay, just watch Pickens' right hand come into the frame. Yeah, that's a bad look. But look, I get it. Emotions are boiling over. But here's the reality. The other guy doesn't have a championship game to play next week. But George Pickens does. The fallout? Pickens got hit with a half-game suspension, which meant Georgia was heading into the SEC championship against a powerhouse LSU, without their top weapon on the field. We're going to support George, and we're going to help him mature. LSU put on a clinic, crushing them in a 37-10 beatdown. Pickens did manage to score a touchdown in the second half, but by then, it was too little, too late. He was crushed. He felt like he'd failed his entire team. So when the Sugar Bowl rolled around, he was on a mission to redeem himself. This wasn't about his own stats, it was for his brothers. He launches it deep for Pickens, he gets under it, makes the grab, and it's a touchdown for Georgia. He absolutely exploded for 175 yards and walked away with the Bowl MVP trophy. My O-line is unbelievable. My quarterback is a beast. I love this whole squad, from the defense on down. Seriously, point the camera at any of these dudes, I'd go to war for them. Pickens wrapped up his freshman year with 49 receptions, 727 yards, and 8 touchdowns, leading the Bulldogs across the board. And Pro Football Focus crowned him the #1 true freshman in the nation. But if you thought that was impressive, his sophomore year was on a whole other level. He torched Arkansas and Auburn for back-to-back touchdowns. But just 1 week later, Pickens made another mental error that ended up hurting his team. It was a heated SEC showdown with Tennessee. The QB ran out of bounds, and for some reason, Pickens squirted him with his water bottle, drawing a penalty flag. I mean, what are we, 7 or 8 years old here? Come on now. It was a messy, complicated year for GP. A mid-season injury forced him to the sidelines, and the whole schedule was chopped up because of COVID, but just like before, when it mattered most, he finished with a bang. There's no debate. George Pickens is the most gifted receiver on this entire Georgia roster. Pickens again! Are you serious? The day this man is having, none of these have been easy catches. He put up over 100 yards in 2 straight games. By now, Pickens was in the conversation for the best receiver in all of college football. The hype for his junior season was massive. And then, during training camp, his world came crashing down. For anyone who hasn't heard the devastating news, it's just been confirmed that George Pickens has apparently torn his ACL. He's going to need ACL surgery, a non-contact injury that happened in the middle of a routine practice. Honestly, man, I just wanted to get back for my team. That's it. To win a natty and just suit up with my guys one more time. The draft wasn't even on my mind. I was ready to do whatever it took to get back on that field. In a stunning comeback, just 8 months after shredding his ACL, GP was back, and his timing couldn't have been more perfect. The Bulldogs were headed to the biggest stage in college football, the national championship. A clash of titans, SEC rivals Alabama and Georgia going head-to-head, and when the lights were brightest and his team needed a hero, he answered the call. They're taking a shot downfield, and it's George Pickens with a diving catch! The star receiver has been waiting his whole career to make a play like that in a moment this huge. That spectacular play led directly to a touchdown, and Georgia pulled it off. They were national champions. It was the very reason Pickens chose to be a Bulldog in the first place. But after the confetti settled, he faced a massive decision. He barely had any film from his junior year. Coming back for another season could send his draft stock soaring. But GP had made up his mind. Man, if I was to come back, there's just too much risk of the same thing happening all over again. I had to make the smartest choice for my future, the best business decision. Heading into the draft, his stock was a total wild card. Some scouts were captivated by his raw passion, while others saw it as a massive red flag. He needs to show he cares on every single snap, even when the ball isn't coming his way, period. Because when I talk to people around the league, and I ask them about George, they all see the exact same thing I do. 85% of the time, if he wasn't running a route or the ball wasn't thrown his way, his team was basically playing shorthanded. So George shut out the outside world, got dressed to the nines for day one of the NFL draft, and then silence. His phone never rang. He was absolutely furious. 6 receivers were taken in the first round, and his name wasn't called once. I was feeling some type of way after that first round was over. I was looking sharp in my suit, you know? But when that whole first day passed, I just went to my room, crashed, and told myself, forget it. I'm not even dressing up for day 2. And on the second day, the same nightmare played out. Another 4 receivers were drafted before him. Then, with pick number 52, he got the call from Mike Tomlin. And the moment his draft reaction hit the internet, he became a legend. The pose? Man, that was just me messing around, trying to be funny. When he called, I was literally shaking holding the phone. I was trying to play it cool, like, yeah, I'm good, didn't want to say too much. I was just thinking, let's get to it. I'm ready to put in the work. You know what I mean? I was thrilled, but deep down, I had this massive chip on my shoulder, a vendetta against the whole league. In my head, I'm thinking, I'm better than every single one of them. They're claiming these other guys are better than me. So in week 3, he came out with a vengeance, pulling off one of the most incredible catches the NFL has ever seen. What a snag with one hand by George Pickens. He followed that up with a 100-yard game against the Jets, but then his targets vanished against the Falcons. Pickens only had the ball thrown his way 2 times, ending the entire game with a single reception. A video surfaced showing him on the sideline, clearly angry and demanding the ball. The media seized the moment, claiming this was the exact attitude problem teams were worried about, but Pickens shut that narrative down hard. He believed the media was spinning a completely bogus story, pointing out that star receivers wanting more targets is as old as the game itself. And his head coach, Mike Tomlin, had his back. That fire, that hunger, the player who wants the ball, give me that guy. I refuse to see that as a bad thing. It doesn't matter how absurd I find the commentary, or people trying to paint his frustration as some kind of character flaw. I just have to laugh at that whole storyline. In the end, Pickens delivered a strong rookie season. The Steelers were banking on a huge jump in his second year, a chance that came sooner than expected when Deontay Johnson was sidelined by an injury, thrusting George into the wide receiver 1 role. And that very week, he made the most of his moment. Pickens is wide open. And he's gone! Touchdown Steelers! He exploded for 127 yards after seeing a career-best 10 targets. The following game against Baltimore, he torched them for another 130 yards and a score, solidifying his case as a true number 1 threat. But the second Deontay Johnson returned to the field, Pickens' targets plummeted. Against Tennessee, he caught 2 passes for a loss of 1 yard. His frustration boiled over. He posted "Free me" on his Instagram story, only to delete it a short time later. The fan base immediately labeled him a diva, not just for his attitude, but for what he did on the field too. GP has a reputation as a ferocious blocker, but in a game against the Colts, he just stopped. And his explanation ignited a firestorm of controversy. "I didn't want to get hurt." When you hold a block for too long, it's really easy for someone to come out of nowhere and take you out. So people are questioning your commitment. All those people questioning my effort have never played a down of football. They should stick to what they know. But, as he always does, he answered the criticism with his play. There he goes, the afterburners, Pickens, see ya, touchdown, an 86-yard house call. Look, I know I said some things earlier this week that probably rubbed you all the wrong way. I just want to make it clear, my only goal is to win. Make the right plays and be a dominant player. That's it. Once again, it was proof that Pickens is one of the most gifted wideouts in the entire league. The Steelers fought their way into the playoffs, drawing a tough road game against Buffalo. But right from the start, it was a disaster. And he completes it to Pickens. But the ball is out as he hits the turf. While he was making a catch, fans pelted him with snowballs, and it didn't stop even when he was on the sideline. As the clock wound down, Pickens was pleading for a penalty flag, but the refs weren't throwing it. And all that pent-up anger just erupted. That's the only thing on my mind. You can't win when you have to beat the other team and the refs. It's a loss either way. Even with a season full of peaks and valleys, he had a breakout year, racking up 1,190 yards with a revolving door at quarterback. Heading into 2024, he was the undisputed #1 receiver. But the season that followed was pure chaos. What went down with Jordan Lewis? He said something, and you retaliated by yanking him down by his face mask? Nothing happened. In a tough loss to the Browns, he got into a skirmish with Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome. You think he'll try to talk to him before the game? Or anything? Man, I don't even know who that is. But that was only one part of the narrative, because while the drama swirled, George was out there making physics-defying plays, launching it deep for Pickens in the end zone. George Pickens. To track that ball in the air like that, I can't even begin to describe how hard that is. After hauling in a 46-yard bomb, he did a celebration the league didn't like, and they hit him with a $20,000 fine. I was just signaling for a first down. The ref said he thought it was something else. He's got a target on his back because of who he is. George Pickens. He gets that. But he needs to mature, and he needs to do it fast. It was a truly bizarre season. Like always, his raw talent was undeniable, making Pickens a vital weapon for the Steelers. But his temper often got the better of him. And in the last game of the year against the Bengals, everything imploded. It just wasn't his game. 1 reception, 3 drops, and he even started jawing with the fans. He was slapped with another fine for a face mask, pushing his season total to over $90,000 for the 2024 season. Some Steelers fans felt his pain, but for many others, it was the final straw. The 2025 season was looming, and it was a do-or-die contract year. His entire future in Pittsburgh was hanging in the balance. And just when you thought it couldn't get more tense, the Steelers dropped a bombshell. We're getting breaking news right now into CBS Sports HQ. The Seahawks have just traded DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And get this, DK is inking a brand new 5-year, $150 million deal. You've got George Pickens and DK Metcalf on the same squad. We're talking 2 alpha receivers who demand the rock every single play. At that moment, everyone knew this couldn't last. The writing was all over the wall. So Pittsburgh started quietly putting out feelers, letting the league know George Pickens was on the market. Most teams just laughed, wanting nothing to do with that drama in their locker room. But one team didn't hesitate, they jumped on the opportunity instantly. And then, just a couple of hours ago, the bomb dropped. The news hit the wire. The Steelers are shipping wide receiver George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys for a handful of draft picks. Look, at the end of the day, everyone's got to make the move that's right for them. And I think, whether you're talking about the organization or the player, that's precisely what went down here. Even your own coach publicly said you had to mature. The media narrative was that you were immature. How did you handle all that negativity being thrown your way? Man, that stuff absolutely gets to you. It hits different when the people who are actually in your life, your real friends, know that the guy they're describing just isn't you. Honestly, I've always found my joy on the field. Like you mentioned, my happiness comes from making things happen. All I want to do is make plays. When that whole story started spinning out of control, the guys inside that Steelers locker room, my teammates, they knew the truth, but the rest of the world had no idea. Let me just set the record straight for a minute. There's this idea out there that he's some kind of prima donna, that he's impossible to deal with. I've spoken with people inside the Steelers organization. Sure, George Pickens wears his heart on his sleeve during games, but they were clear. He is not some uncoachable guy. In reality, he's got a fantastic presence in the locker room. The truth is, he was incredibly popular with his teammates back in Pittsburgh. But now, arriving in Dallas, it was a totally clean slate. A new team, a different locker room, a completely fresh vibe. The Cowboys were already home to one of the NFL's elite receivers in CeeDee Lamb, but instead of seeing a rival, he embraced George from day one. Man, GP, I'm so glad he's with us. He knows I've got his back more than anyone. I tell him all the time. I'm just thrilled for him. I hope we get to ball out together for I don't even know how many years. The number doesn't even matter to me. All I know for sure is this isn't just a one-year thing. The hype around this new 1-2 punch was off the charts, and they delivered on it almost instantly. Pickens in the end zone. Touchdown, Dallas! And just like that, in week 2, GP gets his first score in a Cowboys uniform. He wasn't done. The very next week, he hit pay dirt again. Prescott is scrambling, throws it up. Pickens with the one-handed snag, a Cowboys touchdown! But the celebration was cut short. Prescott scanning the field, and Pickens drops it. And that drop leads to an interception. Tremaine Edmonds is there to snatch it out of the air. You could see it on his face. He felt like he'd failed the very team that took him in. The one team that gave him a second chance. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, CeeDee gets hurt. That meant the following week, all eyes were on Pickens. He was now the number one guy with everything to prove. He was on a mission for redemption, and Pickens looked absolutely unstoppable. He torched them for 134 yards and a pair of touchdowns, but that was just the appetizer. Y'all better enjoy the show, baby. Then he took on Carolina and racked up another 168 yards. Dallas had tapped into a version of George that the league had forgotten existed. He was loose, he was having fun, the energy was electric, and head coach Schottenheimer was all about it. You know, with GP, everyone was focused on the narrative, his past, all the baggage that supposedly came with him. But let me tell you, that young man has been an absolute joy to have on this team. The kind of passion and energy he brings to our squad, it completely spreads through the entire building. I'm not one to ever call a receiver unstoppable, but man, he's getting pretty close. Then, facing the Commanders, his brother CeeDee made his return. And by now, this wasn't just about being teammates anymore. These two had become true friends, and they were just out there bawling, having the time of their lives. I should really be getting paid for this! Oh, wait, I already am. How many insane catches can one guy make in a single game? The man the NFL painted as a villain had just become the Cowboys' new caped Crusader. And the biggest difference? This time, he was doing it all with a massive grin on his face. George, people are saying you haven't stopped smiling since you arrived. Yeah, I never used to. If you felt the hype in this story, do me a huge favor and smash that like button, and more than anything, hit subscribe. Every single click helps this channel grow, which means I can bring you even better stories more often. I'm pouring everything I've got into creating these stories for you all. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, stay blessed.